January 2022, and BHSpringSolutions believes that we're in the middle of a high power swarm in the high power world right now. 2 months ago, Springfield released the S.79, the Girsan P35 arrived next. That's the subject of our evaluation and analysis that we're going to be getting into. And last week, FN announced a new high power pistol that doesn't look like it shares too much kinship with anything else that's ever been called high power before. So there is a swarm happening in the world today, and we're going to sort some questions out about each and every one of them that comes to the high power playground. This is always the question for us at BHSpringSolutions is, will the BH Advanced high power components that we have developed, will these be compatible in whatever it is? And is it can we consider it a worthy foundation for the building of a BH Advanced Masterpiece high power? And so those are our objectives of the testing and evaluation that we're going to be commencing now with the Girsan. And actually this testing and evaluation has already commenced, but I'm going to start out by just getting you acquainted with the handgun. It arrives in a package like this. Have your instructions, your lock has a cleaning brush, that's nice. The base pistol is here. It closely follows the Browning or FN Mark III's model, and similar grips. They've used it looks like kind of a copycat ambi safety. The Tissos and Springfield did not have that. When we open it up, we will find some other commonalities with the FN and the Brownings. One thing we will kind of notice here is, and those of you who have watched our feature video in High Power University about the high power's beaver tail, is it dysfunctional, and that whole question, you're going to notice that the down point here of the hammer or the underneath side of this has raised. They have done some angle work with the hammer, and we don't have a hammer encroaching so much. However, when the slide comes back, it pushes this hammer down, and it's still a real tight relationship there. Springfield did a very similar kind of a thing, and I'm not saying that necessarily will be hammer bite. I've got fairly medium average size hands, and you see that a high grip hold, see how that starts, my skin starts to, yeah. And I mean, it's not like I got really big meat hooks or anything. A lot of guys got, more hands than me. But, generally, I think they went the right direction here by doing what they did. This would concern me just a little bit because, things are going to get very cozy there during shooting. Has the traditional high power trigger subassembly with the magazine disconnect installed, and all of its benefits or detriments. Does create a nice reset, even if the trigger pull is not all that fantastic. Everything in the rear of the grip frame, this all looks standard, traditional high power operating system, standard slide stop. I will tell you this, as compared to the Springfield SA35, which exhibited some really radical sharp edges on parts like the slide stop, I don't get that here. Also, I don't get the sharpness on the edge of the upper part of the grip frame. Also on the frame rails themselves, the upper part of the ejection port, this has all been deburred. There's not the exhibition of sharp edges. The slide stop serrations, these are also not sharp edged. They're sufficiently edged, and generally it's a nice job. So I don't think we have a repeat of the Springfield. I don't think that's what we're looking at. You're going to notice here in the slide, this is FN Browning's, actually originally designed by BHSpringSolutions, Chief Weapons and Modifications designer. That's the Type 2 drop safety sear lever, has a spring under it for positive positioning. That's different than either the TISAS or the Springfield were. Standard recoil spring guide rod. Different recoil spring equation than Springfield went with. This is a more typical recoil spring in terms of length, and we haven't evaluated the strength of it yet. We've done about 100 rounds of shooting. This is the Girsan stock barrel, and fit in the slide. It sounds sloppy, but actually that's really not a bad fit. In the slide, I'm going to put this recoil spring back in, and okay, I'm going to show you something right here, and that's the movement or the margin that the barrel has in the barrel bushing, and that's just, you know, the regular install. I point that out. In our first 100 rounds, we put a target at 15 yards. And this was what that target looked like. Now, this is a very small rifle target. As you can see, the target compared to the size of the 9mm holes that went through the cardboard left of the target, this was two-hand grip hold on the Girsan, and standing. So this was not shooting from a rest, and this was at 15 yards. We went ahead immediately and we dropped in a BH advanced barrel, and that's here. And when we did that, the very first shot went right there. We really weren't getting on the paper or on the target before, and you see the rest of those and how they came out with the BH barrel. Then we did that again from a rest, and again, all the Girsan shots, albeit they did group nicely, that's not to the point of aim. And then the BH barrel was here, and again, this was from a rest, the same 15 yards, but with a rest and support under the arms. So this is something that we keyed in on quickly with the Girsan, and it just happened to be because we decided for the first shots and the first shooting, put a target out at 15 yards. Generally, we ought to be able to get somewhere on this target with some decent reliability, even though it's a small little rifle target. But, you know, at 15 yards, we ought to be able to get, you know, into that target, and we weren't. And so we decided, you know, can we drop a BH barrel in this Girsan, and can we get there? And, of course, the answer was yes, and we did, and it happened twice. So that was a rather quick thing that, you know, once you get out to around 15 yards, the Girsan with the OEM barrel did not shoot to the point of aim. And so this was, since we happened to have you know, the BH Advanced high power barrel, dropping one of those in was a quick and easy thing for us to do, and just go right back to the target, which we did. But here's something we also picked up on. Now I've dropped in, you know, the BH Advanced barrel is dirty because it's just been had some shooting go through it. But when I drop this in, it locks up very securely. There's no issue there. But yeah, there is just, it is a fit from God or something. Now, is this good or is this not good? What I can tell you is this is not typical for the BH Advanced barrel to drop into a high power slide and there be absolutely no margin whatsoever. And margin, I mean specifically for the slide to heat up, the barrel to heat up. This is a very, very hot point right down here in these slide serrations where these lugs are locking up. And this depends on a lot of things. What I can tell you is this is not what we normally see. More often than not, what we would see is we would see somebody's manufacturer's OEM barrel, and it would be about that kind of a fit, and that kind of a fit is okay. everything's going to get bigger. Everything's going to expand when the heat happens during shooting of the slide and those barrel lugs, and that relationship is going to get tighter. This relationship is starting out tight, cold. And to be honest with you, we don't have a lot of experience here, because this is not the way that this thing, that this typically goes. I noticed something different about the Girsan. The BH barrel, all barrels, including the OEM and the Springfield and the Tissos, have a lot of lateral movement here. The Girsan, we drop in the the BH barrel, it does not have a lot of lateral movement, and we don't have any excessive real lateral movement with the OEM barrel either. However, when we install the BH barrel, and we may be cutting to some real meat in this review of the Girsan very quickly, actually. But what I wanted to show you is mag disconnect. What I wanted to show you is with the BH barrel, I just can't get any movement right there. The relationship is phenomenal. Now, will this thing lock up, after we go 50, 75 rounds deep into some extreme testing? It could. It may. Another concern that we're going to have is, where will this relationship get its margin? In other words, if we just go to the range and just shoot, say, 200, 300 rounds, and that heat happens, we'll be able to see what happens, or we'll experience what happens, because everything's going to lock up and it won't run. Or after we've built up that much heat, we'll be able to see inside where did the metal to metal relationships work themselves out or did not, or we'll be finding that out. But we're getting into some really meaty stuff in this evaluation, in this testing, very, very quickly. We're going to be wrapping the video up for today. However, oh my goodness, I almost forgot one of the best and coolest parts. Did you see what we have on this one? The Tissos and the Springfield, you just didn't have any sight options. The dovetail sight cuts were kind of funky as far as their sizes, and this appears, yes, they copied Browning's Mark III dovetails. We did install Meprolite night sights that are specifically made for the Browning Mark III dovetails, and those installed. The original sights, this is another subject here. I want to pop these out real quick, because this is the other part of the story, is the original sights are here. And so you get this typical, rear that looks exactly like an FN sight, actually. And then you have this one for the front, and you got this ramp deal going on right there. So when you push that out and you push another one in, you do not get exactly a clean effect. And we'll see, there it is. You can see it right there. We're going to try to get in closer and see if we can focus. But yeah, that's kind of a bummer, because that really just buys you a slide refinish when you upgrade your sights, because that original sight with that original ramp just leaves its autograph right there. And see if we get a decent look at it this way. I mean, it's not horrible, but we've tried to touch this with bluing and get it to come in, and it just hasn't been meant to be to this point. So, and it hasn't worked out. Obviously, it's better than it was when we first pushed that sight out. But that's a little bit of a bummer for that, because this the fixed sight, you don't gain that much with this sort of a front sight. Maybe it's a better sight picture, maybe it's not. I haven't noticed a betterment with them personally, but it leaves you an unclean press out of the OEM sight. Otherwise, this is fairly straightforward. Now, I will go a little bit further. The angle of this dovetail and the angle of this dovetail here, these are not 100% copies, perfect copies of the Browning Mark III's dovetails. However, our experience with this particular Girsan is we were able to do a very small amount of fitting filing on the Mark III sight. And very quickly we were able to resolve any differences as far as angle or amount of metal we needed in order to press it in the way it should press in. And it did come in very nicely. We'll see if we can just get a visual there on the front and on the sides, just basically like with any Browning. We may have just a little bit of a shop time or a little extra, supplemental, charge for the fitting of the sight into the Girsan dovetail, since it's not a quote press out, press in kind of a thing. But we'll have to do a couple more of them before we can decide the extent that should be. So anyway, we are down the road a ways on the Girsan. We've had it completely detail stripped. We've had it completely back together. In 100 rounds, we've had no malfunctions. We did not notice anything glaring in this entire pistol, including the Girsan extractor. We did caliper that to know some critical dimensions on the extractor. We don't see a need to address that part at this time. That was necessary kind of early on with the Springfield, but it's not in the Girsan so far. The barrel, we won't be continuing to test with the Girsan barrel. We want to be testing with a barrel that shoots to the point of aim, and we think that's reasonable. Just right up front early on here in our testing that we're going to go ahead and replace out the barrel that doesn't hit the target and not test with that. However, for the most part after that, we're gonna put some rounds downrange with their traditional operating system, with everything out of the box as it came, except the sights, which we went ahead and replaced because we needed to evaluate if that's really the Mark III dovetails and how accurate are they, and the barrel. And other than that, we're going to be doing some heavy shooting very, very soon. We're going to end this video right now. This afternoon we are scheduled to do metal hardness testing on this frame slide and all of the internal parts and components, and we'll have the results of those actually this afternoon as we're even making this video. So folks, thanks for watching so far. This was session 1 about the Girsan MC P35 high power, and I'm Mark Allen for BHSpringSolutions LLC and BHSpringSolutions.com.